Yellowstone, the hit show with Kevin Costner and the rest of the great cast, filmed here in Montana. That's the topic of today's Coffee with Alain. So good morning, everybody. I don't have a Yellowstone cup, but I do got one of my John Wayne cups in the spirit of the Western. Has a great quote inside the cup that I'm not going to share today. We'll save that for a different episode. But in the spirit of Yellowstone, I got a John Wayne Western cup. And I will say there are going to be spoilers for the first 5 seasons that have already aired. I'm going to be talking about those. I will not be talking about anything that's going to happen that has not been on TV yet. So if you want inside stuff for what's coming out next summer, you're not going to get it here. Sorry. We sign non-disclosure statements and all that. And so I will not talk about anything except things that have already been aired in the first 5 seasons. Going to say good morning to Jay. Going to say good morning to Robin. Appreciate you both being here. Now, I have to stop for a moment. And before I get into the Yellowstone, I'm giving a shout out to Richard Prosh and his wife, Gina Prosh. They both watched this show and have given nice comments about it. They're enjoying the Coffee with Alain. But I got a package from them yesterday. And, it's Richard's book, Pony Boys. It looks, it's a Western, so it goes with today. I haven't read it yet. I'll talk more about it after I've read it. I'm going to work this into the reading pretty soon and check this out. And then I also got the This Day's Joy by Gina. Looking forward to checking this out. And, I like here, she said, Alain, you supply the safety and I'll kickstart the joy. Enjoy life safely. So I love that. And all the best by Gina. And Richard, he signed his too. Really awesome to get this nice package in the mail yesterday. Wasn't really expecting, what was going to happen. For my friend Alain, thanks for your good words and inspiration. All the best, Rich. Okay, so, that was just awesome. And I want to give them a public shout out and say thank you very much. And I'll mention these again after I've read them so I can, tell people a little bit about them after I've read them. But those came in yesterday's mail, and I wanted to say a public thank you for that and greatly appreciated. I'm going to say howdy to Eric from Columbus. Appreciate you being here and being on, Eric. And then we can get into talking about Yellowstone. I'm going to share some things. And if you have questions, put them in the comment box and I'll try to answer those questions. But the first thing I'll answer that a lot of people want to know is, how'd you get on the show? Well, it was pretty easy. Was sitting there watching TV one night. The news was on by dinner. After dinner, watching the news, my wife and daughter were there, and the thing came on that they were doing this open casting call down at one of the hotels here in town in Missoula for a new show that was starring Kevin Costner. Didn't know really anything else about it, and I thought that could be cool. Should I go do that? My wife and daughter were like, "Yeah, sure, go." So that Saturday morning, I went and stood in line down at the hotel, a long line. They took my name and contact information and photograph, and that was it. A little bit later, I got an email, and you were also invited to be on this Facebook page where they posted things they were looking for. But the one that I got an email for, the very first episode of season 1, if you remember, there was some BLM agents, Bureau of Land Management agents, and, Kevin Costner's one son was killed and stuff. So the scene was, if you remember, the first episode, season 1, when his son is being brought to the house, Kevin Costner comes out of the house and he talks to his son, Jamie, by the house. Then he walks across the yard, gets on a horse, and he rides the horse out to where they're bringing in his son that was dead. That was the scene we were filming. And I was there all day in the BLM outfit, a fake gun on the hip and all this kind of stuff. And they never got to our scene. So I spent the whole day on the set. They were filming some other stuff, the funeral part, where they had the people in the suits and stuff, but where I was in the BLM agent. And we waited, all of us BLM agents waited all day. They fed us well. They had snacks and drinks, and we BS'd with some of the, the crew people, and never used us. Then they're like, can some of you guys, who can come back tomorrow? I said, I can come back tomorrow. So those of us that came back the next day, now we're in the BLM clothes again. And finally we're doing this scene, right? And I'm out there. There's a group of BLM agents sort of in the grass. Then there's me and another BLM agent over beside a car. I'll tell you an interesting story about that car in a minute. And we're, what they told me and him to do is like, be like we're talking and, blah, blah, blah. I'm on the phone and we're because everybody's all upset because everything happened that last night, the killings and all that, right? Okay. So then Kevin Costner, he comes out, talks to Jamie, walks across the yard, walks right past me and the guy I'm with, right, in the car, and like right beside us, and he gets on the horse, and then he rides away. And they do that multiple times, right? And Taylor Sheridan and Kevin Costner were discussing it. It was sort of cool to listen into them talking, and they're walking right past us, and gets on the horse and rides off. I was like, cool, when that's on TV, man, we're there. We're right behind Kevin Costner. Yeah, well, when the show aired, I learned a little bit about, being in the shows. The show shows Kevin Costner talking to Jamie, and then it cuts to him on the horse riding away. They didn't show any of that walk across the grass right past me that they were filming from all the different ways. So I never was seen in that episode or season one. That's the only episode that I actually worked on for season one, was that one. I was there up for 2 days. They paid me for both days. They pay you even though we didn't do anything because we were there all day. And, they feed you well. But that was the only thing I did for season one. And my season was cut. Jay says, what is my favorite season? It has to be season 5 because I've finally seen myself about 5 times on season 5. So, and I'll get to those, but that's probably my favorite. Thanks, Jim. How many would you say are on the crew? I'm not sure, Eric. It's a lot. And it seems, in season 5, we had like hundreds of extras at the time, but there were so many people doing so many different things on the crew. It's like amazing that, they have people makeup and hair and, all the people that have to move the cameras and set up the equipment. They got people that are out there just making sure props are where they need to be. There are people that all they do is handle the extras. We're called background on the set. And they, the directors tell these people, I want the background doing this and this and this. And then those people come and say, hey, I need you guys to do this. I need you guys to do that. And put the background where the director wanted them doing them. Then there's people managing the animals. There's people cooking for us. There's people cooking for the crew. There are so many vehicles and trailers. There's wardrobe people. I don't know how many, but it's a lot. And when you look at all the different trailers and vehicles and things that they got going on, it's pretty amazing and cool to see. That's what's sort of been fun about being part of the show. Jay said cool. Eric said very cool. So it's fun. And but that was my whole experience for season 1, that one scene. Now season 2, I did not do any background work. I did stand-in work. I took a couple calls for stand-in. I was a stand-in for Casey one day, and I was a stand-in for some bad guys one day. And so stand-in work, if for those of you, you're not familiar with it, the scene that I did with Casey was, if you remember in season 2, when him and Rip come riding into the corral, they get off their horses and get into a fight, right? So they come riding into the corral and they're filming that. They get off their horses, they stop. Everything stops. They stop filming. Stand in. I go in and stand where Casey got off his horse. Another guy goes in and stands where Rip got off his horse. They move stuff around. They got to move the cameras. They got to move the lighting, get everything ready. When they're all ready, they bring Casey and Rip, the actors, back in, and me and the other stand-in, we go off to the side and get out of the way. And so basically stand-in work is you stand in the place of the actor while they're getting lights and cameras and other things set up. And then they bring the real actors in, and the stand-ins just get out of the way, and they do the scene. And so I was in that scene with Rip and Casey when they're the fight and doing the stand-in stuff. And then I'll tell you about the other scene after I answer this question. Jim says, did you ever get to meet any of the main actors? I have been right there with like Kevin Costner and Taylor Sheridan. I could reach out and touch them when they're talking about stuff, but they weren't really talking to me, right? And I wasn't involved in the conversation. I have been there when the actors like Kevin Costner or Kelly, who plays Beth, or them, that they actually, say hello to the group of us, not one-on-one. On that season 2, when I was doing the stand-in work for Rip and Casey, us stand-ins, we did eat with the cowboy crew, because all the guys that come riding in with Rip and Casey. So we got to eat with them and interact just a tiny little bit during that lunch. I've interacted a tiny little bit with Mo in season 5. I said something to him one time, and then he came up. There was a little group of us, and he shook all our hands and said hi and stuff. I've interacted a tiny little bit with Gil, who plays Rainwater, but most of the time you don't, because you're told you're working and getting paid. They're working, they're getting paid. You are not getting paid to bother them for a selfie or this. And if you want to not get paid, not work, go do it. So if they come and talk to you and interact, cool. And it's been just a tiny little bit. Or they interact with the whole group. They say hi, and Kevin Costner gives a little motivational speech and says, thank you guys for what you're doing to help with the show. But never a conversation, a one-on-one long conversation or anything like that. Again, they're working, I'm working. Good morning. Have fun. Thank you, Rhonda. How long did it take to shoot the scene with Beth in the bar? If you're talking about the scene this year with where the guy offered to buy her a trout slayer, I'm actually sitting behind her on a table with 2 ladies. We're sitting there faking like we're drinking alcohol. It wasn't real alcohol. And you can actually see my profile when he's hitting on her and she lays into him. If you look behind, that was me back on that table. You can see my profile. They probably did that scene. I mean, first they got to get it all set up. Where do they want this? Where do they want? And they're staging it, and that takes a little while. And then, they did that scene a number of times. I mean, I want to say I heard her little speech at least 5 or 6 times, because they kept changing the cameras where they had the cameras angled. And I was like, wow, that one angle, you might see me. And you actually did. Other angles, you don't get, if they would have used a different angle, you wouldn't have seen me. I've been in scene because I've been in other scenes. Season 4, I did some scene where Beth talked to the older lady that shows up, her sort of her enemy now, the short hair. And it was filmed in the same country club out there by Hamilton, Montana. And I was in the background holding a wine, talking with a guy, and we had our ladies with us. There were the 4 of us, like we were interacting at a country club. And a certain scene would have been great and would have showed all 4 of us. That scene never made it in the show. That, season 4, I did several scenes, and none of them I got to see myself because of the angles they use. And so we were probably filming that scene with Beth in that bar for season 5. I mean, it was a few hours, that we're sitting there, and and because again, they have to get everything ready, and then they film for all the different angles and between shots when they're changing cameras and lightings. So it's a lot of hurry up and wait. And extras, we're allowed to talk quietly, and when we're waiting, and you make friends with other extras. Then when they're rolling, you be quiet, and everything's pantomime, so we pretend we're talking and drinking and eating and different stuff. I had another scene in season 4 to show you about, what happens in TV. It was a great scene with Beth and Rainwater. They're talking. And every scene where they focused on Chief Rainwater's face when he's talking, I was right behind him at the dinner table. I was eating dinner that time with a lady, and I had the salmon. I remember she had the steaks. I rather have had the steak, but they gave me the salmon, gave her the steak, and it was real food. We were actually able to eat some. I mean, it was actually very good, the country club, and so we were eating small bites because we did it over and over and over, a number of times, and that scene wasn't in the show whatsoever. So it's just sort of funny how sometimes that happens. One scene from season 2, because yeah, see, yeah, that was season 4 where I was behind Chief Rainwater and never was on the show. Season 3, I never worked. Season 3, the call dates they had for the parts they were filming up there didn't work with my schedule because I was super busy teaching for Reflex Protect that summer. And so I didn't film anything for season 3. The dates just didn't work up. And they were still filming some out of state. The first 3 seasons, they only filmed some in Montana. They were filming some in Utah and some different places. Season 4 and season 5, they filmed all in Montana. But season 4, we were filming during COVID. And so it was funny because, I said I'm behind Chief Rainwater eating dinner. As soon as they yelled cut, they made us put our masks and stuff back on. And then right when they're filming, they're like, mask off, rolling, they film, cut, mask on. They were very strict about, making sure everybody was safe. We had to do COVID tests prior to being on the set. We had to sign things saying after our COVID test, we wouldn't go out in public into big groups, trying to keep the actors healthy, because if an actor, got COVID, they got to shut down, production. So they were testing us, and they tested us on season 5 too. We didn't have to wear the mask in a lot of the outside scenes and stuff we were doing when we filmed season 5, but we were still being tested for COVID prior to being on the set, on the set, the day of the set. So they're pretty strict about that, trying to keep everybody healthy, which I appreciate because I wanted to stay healthy myself too. But season 3, I wasn't in. Season 4, I did those scenes, never made it on TV. And then season 5, I filmed, it was the most I ever did. I was up there for a number of different days doing different things, and I actually got to see myself a number of times on different episodes, so it was sort of cool. So that's why I said that's my favorite season for seeing myself. As far as the favorite season of the show, my wife and I have enjoyed all the seasons. It's a good show. It's a fun show, and it's interesting to see where it's going to go next. But here's something with season 2 about, when they cut things out, and I felt so bad for the stuntman. If you remember season 2, bad guys drive up in that Bentley, and there were a couple sort of bodyguard-ish types with the main actor, the main character. Part of my stand-in work on that episode was sitting in the Bentley while they're getting the cameras and stuff, angles at the Bentley and stuff right. So yeah, I got, that's a tough job. I'm sitting there in the Bentley going, pretty nice ride. Okay. But then they brought the real stunt people in, the actors. And if you remember that scene, Rip gets into a fight with them, and then Kevin Costner comes riding up with the horse and knocks the one guy over and stuff. Rip has the one guy, and the other guy's pointing the gun at Rip, who's got the other guy. And Costner comes riding in and hits the guy that's holding the gun. And they did that scene over and over and over and over. Kevin Costner rode the horse a few times. He was actually riding the horse on some of them. Then his double did some of the scenes. But what never made the TV show, which I felt so bad about, was after Kevin Costner knocked that guy with the gun with his horse, Lloyd was on a horse right behind Kevin Costner and right behind Kevin Costner's double. He roped that guy and pulled him across the yard of the house. A couple times he missed, but most of the time he got that guy and it drug him across the yard, because Lloyd was on the horse. It roped that stunt guy, and that stunt guy, and he gets jerked, and across the yard he went. And it was cool to be there and watch it. I got to watch that over and over and over because I'm just the stand-in guy. So after they got me out of the Bentley, I'm just standing over there and we're watching, enjoying the show and the action. And then I watched that show on TV and they cut that scene. And I felt so bad for that stuntman for getting drugged across the yard over and over and over, and it didn't even air on the show. But yeah, it's just interesting how some of that goes on. So Jim asks, how far from your location is being filmed? Okay, I live in Missoula, Montana. The main house and the ranch is in Darby, Montana, which is about 50 miles away. Some of the stuff is filmed in Hamilton, which is between here and Darby. It's about 45 miles from Missoula. And that big country club where some of those scenes that I was in were at, That is just outside of Hamilton. It's actually a bit, Stockyard Country Club was started by Charles Schwab, the investment guy, in this very nice, very rich area out there in the Bitterroot Valley. So some of the scenes were filmed at that country club by Hamilton. Now, if you remember in season 4, there was Ruby's Cafe and Kevin Costner and Rip, and there was the shootout, and the police officer was killed, or the sheriff's officer was killed. That restaurant is right in the middle of Missoula. It's probably a little less than a mile, or maybe a mile from where I'm sitting right now. My house is Ruby's Cafe. I've eaten there tons of times. It's right by the main post office. So when I go, I wasn't part of that scene. I was mailing some books that day at the post office, which is right across the street. So I went to the post office while they were filming that scene. So I knew that there was going to be a scene with Ruby's in the episode because I saw them filming there. And actually, I said when I was leaving, one of the guys that handles the background extras who I had worked with, because in my scenes, I rolled down the window, hey, it's like, hey guys, and as I drove by. But they have filmed the casino that they use is up on top of Evero Hill, 15 miles from here, from where I'm at. So they have filmed in a lot of different locations right close, literally in Missoula, in Hamilton, Darby, close to Missoula. In the first seasons, they did do some filming in Utah and different places. Obviously, they filmed some in Texas for those Texas scenes. But the main ranch is about 50 some miles from here at Darby, Montana. And so that's, where I've gone to do most of the filming is up there by the ranch. Season 5 was probably my most enjoyable season because I did the most. I filmed a variety of scenes. I told you I was in that scene with Beth when she gets hit on at the bar. I was at the scene where he gets sworn in. If you remember when John Dutton gets sworn in and gives a little speech, I'm in that crowd. And if you watch really close when they're doing the national anthem, you'll see my face in the crowd, where they're playing the national anthem. I felt sort of bad. The young gal that was on the stage with them, and they show her sort of singing, but you don't hear her voice. She sang the entire national anthem several times while they're filming, and then she sang parts of it while they're filming other scenes, and she did a really nice job. And they don't really get to hear her in the show sing, right? They sort of cut it and did a little different way that they edited that and put it in. But, the young lady had a really nice voice and did a great job. I mean, she sang the whole song through multiple times, and it was blistering hot. We filmed that in the summer. It was hot out there, and they kept passing out tons and tons of water, making sure everybody drinks a lot, and we could go get in the shade during breaks or try to find some shade. And she sang that song multiple times, and you don't get to hear a beautiful voice. It was, so she did get to be up on stage and get her, she appeared on the show though. So that was cool. And I said, I'm out in the crowd, and there's that one scene during the national anthem where if you know where to look, you can, oh, there I am. You see my face. So I did get to do that. And so that was a fun scene to do. The party where, John Dutton comes in, and if you remember, there's a big dinner and people are sitting at the tables. I'm at one of the tables. You never get to see me sitting at one of the tables. I get to see a couple friends of mine. Mary was there at a table and got a good shot of her when Kevin Costner was passing her. Often we were doing stuff together, but on that particular scene, we were at different tables. An interesting thing is if you remember when Kevin Costner and Beth come up to the head table, and then Beth says she's not eating, not that tight dress she was wearing. The two people right beside Beth at that head table, that was Senator Baucus and his wife that were sort of background. That was an actual former senator of Montana. He was a senator for many years. And so he was sort of an extra at that head table. It was actual Senator Baucus and his wife were at that table. That was sort of cool that, they were there. And you got to be a Montanan sort of to recognize who they were. But I was in that scene. You don't see me when I'm sitting at the table. Later, when Beth and Rip are sitting up on the mountain and they flash down to the band playing the songs, you can see me down in front of the band, sort of moving around a little bit. If you know where to look, you can see my profile down there. Told a couple friends, and I was like, "Oh, nice moves." Like, yeah, well, I'm not a dancer. I wasn't out there doing the fancy dancing, but they just had me down in the crowd. That was sort of fun because between the takes, got to talk with the band. There was a few of us there in the front, talking with the band. I forget their name off the top of my head, but it was a great song. They played over and over, and we heard it many times. And they were really good guys. And so, got to interact with them during the downtime. And again, it's hurry up, wait. And so that was sort of fun, night to be filming some of that. Another day, I signed up for 4 days, and we were there for 4 long days, and it was hotter than blazes. And I actually got a little sunburn on the first day because I didn't take my wife's advice and put sunscreen on. The next 3 days, I sure did. I mean, I put sunscreen on. I just didn't have some everywhere where I needed it. So I missed a couple spots. And so we were out there for 4 long days filming that cattle drive coming in, the big meals going on, the branding, the dancing. If you remember, Kevin Costner danced with the senator lady. All those scenes took 4 days of filming, and we had several different outfits that we would change clothes depending on what they were filming, of what they wanted to do. And I made it in a couple scenes, wasn't in some others. A friend of mine, Bob, he got a great shot of him eating with Kevin Costner and the governor, the senator, the former governor, were eating, and Bob was right there. And it's like cool because Bob and I hung out, him and I and a couple others, we hung out a lot in our downtime together, got to know each other. And he had a really great scene in there. I had one scene where I was walking behind Kevin Costner when he was talking to the gal that's living with him now that got out of jail. There's a scene where they're talking, and if you watch close, you see me walking by in the background. Another shot of me you got to see was when Rip was telling the cowboys, the couple, that, hey, we're going to be taking the cattle on the trip, and you guys are going with me. I was on the fence line, and you can see me real quick, in a couple of those scenes. So I got to be on TV on a couple, even though I was filming a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, we did so many different things. Like when Kevin Costner and them were bringing in the cattle, I was out there in a crowd watching them bring in the cattle, raising a beer to them as they were coming in. They filmed me in the chow line, getting some food and stuff in one, which, never made it. They filmed me doing some other stuff, walking here and there, never made it. They filmed so much, and so much ends up on the cutting room floor. So you never know what you're going to be in for sure. So it was cool to spot myself in a couple places. The one thing, Ryan Bingham, he sang that song, and it was funny because they were playing the music. And I was like, yeah, and they didn't play the whole song because they were filming some stuff. And it's like, I like that song. I wish I'd play the whole dang song. It's a good song. And I didn't realize who he was, where I knew him from. And so then, they had, I'm forgetting her name, but she's the country singer that's part of the show now, romantic interest is one of the cowboys. She got up and she sang a full song. It was cool. It was like we're getting our private concert here, all of us background. And then she passes the guitar over, and he got up and sang his song, and he sang the whole song through. And I was like, yeah, cool. We got to hear the whole song live. It was a good song. And I asked, it was Bob. I was like, where do I know him from? He's like, oh yeah, he's been in country music before he got in here. I said, oh really? I said, yeah, he's known for his singing and before he got the acting job. So then I go home and I Google him that night. And, he won the Academy Award for the theme song for Crazy Heart. I got the CD soundtrack back here in the office. I love that movie, and I love the music from that movie. So I had been listening to his song way back when Crazy Heart came on, and didn't realize it was the same person. And now I know. And it was really cool that we got our private little live concert by the two of them singing those songs. So that was a fun day. And if you watch the show, you remember there's a scene where Gator comes in and he's serving the food in the house. Well, Gator was also out there those 4 days cooking up a storm. And you can see that in some of the scenes. He has those big giant smokers. And I forget, he told us how many pounds of meat that he cooked that week. It was it was a lot. I mean, he was cooking beef and chicken and just tons of stuff. And we got to go up there and have some of that too. So, I mean, that was a perk of being an extra. It wasn't our official meal, but he was cooking all that food and crew, giving it out to crew would come up and get it. The background could go up and get some. And they're like, yeah, go through, get some, it's a party. Make sure act like you're eating and stuff. So that scene where Kevin Costner is eating with, he goes through and gets the food from Gator and gets, with the senator, and that I said Bob was in, Bob was back there eating some food he got from Gator, and it was delicious. And so I had, quite a few, helpings throughout the week of different things that he was cooking up, some great stuff. Great guy. He was fun to talk to. Because I said in the downtime, you go over, hey, Gator, how's it going? Hey, what's going on? What are you cooking today? And he's like, oh, I got this and this going on today. And nice guy, so that was sort of fun and just something to do on the, extra. And they, like I said, they had tons of water for us because it was so hot. They had snacks for us and drinks, and they feed you well. You don't get paid great. I mean, they give you, I think it's like $135 plus. It was like a $40 gas bump, paying for the gas because you're driving from Missoula. And that's for an all-day gig. So, I mean, it's not a ton of money. You don't do it for the money. You do it for the experience. It was just cool to do. I can say, they fed us well. They treated us well. Everybody was nice. It was nice. You got along. You made friends. It was a really good experience. And that's what I did it for. I wanted the experience, and I really enjoyed it. And it was fun. And next summer, if they're filming again and it works with my schedule, I'll do it again. Obviously my teaching schedule comes first. They actually asked me a couple days, I got the email saying, Alan, we got these parts available. Are you available? And it's like, ooh, that would be cool, but I'm teaching, and so I'm traveling and teaching. Obviously that comes first, but if I got a free day where I can rearrange stuff, it's been really fun to go up there. I was lucky that 4 days that they were filming, I had that week free. If it would have been the week before or the week after, I couldn't have done it because of my training schedule. But I was able to go up that 4 days, and that was really cool because we were on set, got that private concert, got that great food. Gator was good, and so it was cool. Jim said something. It would be amazing if you did it for free and just got fed. Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, the experience, just going up there and having the experience and getting fed, you're right, it is good. Getting the check later is even nice. And when they were doing the pre-COVID tests, because not the last shows I had to do, but some of the earlier, when they were doing the COVID test, they made us do a COVID test 3 days before filming, and they actually paid you for going and getting the COVID test, and they paid for the test. So it didn't cost you anything, and they put extra in your paycheck because you went and did the COVID test. Then they stopped doing the pre-COVID test, and you only had to do the test every morning, the rapid test every morning, the first thing when you arrived on set. It's like, first thing, COVID, next thing, paperwork, next thing, costuming, making sure that what you're wearing is okay. And this is usually early in the morning. And the next thing, you can go eat, and then after breakfast, wait until they tell you what to do. That's how most mornings went. COVID test, check in, costumes, eat, then wait to take the bus up to where you're filming. Because they always have a staging area where they do all that stuff, get the costuming, do the paperwork, do the COVID test, feed you the breakfast, and then they would bus you to where you're filming. So like when it was up at the ranch, they have a staging area in Darby, and then they bus you up to where the ranch is, just a couple miles outside of Darby. When I was at the courthouse, when we did the swearing in, when you catch me at the national anthem, they did the staging area out at Bonner, Montana, because there's nowhere to park, a few hundred people downtown Missoula. So they were out at an area of Bonner where they had the tent set up to do the COVID test, the costuming, the feed us and all that stuff. And then we had the bus back into Missoula, and they they rented the entire courthouse. I mean, they paid the city or county for the courthouse to where they did that filming, but then they also rented out a bar next to the courthouse, and that bar was an area for us extras to take a break and have lunch. They had some food and snacks and stuff for us there, when we weren't over there at the courthouse doing the filming and stuff. So I mean, they do things right, and I'm sure it costs them an awful lot of money to do everything they do. Because just that time where they had to, I heard on the news they paid $10,000 just to use the courthouse, the front of the courthouse that day, and then I don't know what they paid the bar or the other places for the, for that area just for that one day of filming, and I don't know what they paid Ruby's, when they did that day of filming at Ruby's Cafe, and when they go to other stores. I mean, they filmed at hospitals, they filmed at stores, so they spend an awful lot of money. I saw an article about how much money they brought into Montana filming that show here, and it was a lot. I mean, and they only would hire Montanans. I got to say good morning to Ted. Ted was down there with me at the SHOT Show, a law enforcement officer from out in Ohio, and we got to know each other at the SHOT Show and work together down there with Reflex Protect. So good morning, Ted. But yeah, so a lot of people wanted to be extras, like from Idaho or different places, but these last couple of years it's Montana only. And the reason is, there's tax breaks and incentives for filming. Different states give different things, different countries give different breaks and tax things, because these films or television shows are bringing money into that community. I mean, so they were only hiring Montanans, and for a couple of those scenes, they're hiring hundreds of us, and for multiple days. And so that's, putting a little bit of money into the community. I mean, what? I mean, 200 or 300 of us at $135 plus the gas bump a day for multiple days. That's putting some money into the local community. Whatever they're paying the locations, that country club. I don't know what the deal is with the ranch where they do a lot of filming. What if they're renting that or leasing that, or I'm not sure, but then all these other stores. So they bring a lot of money into the areas where they film, and there's certain incentives that are given to companies to do that, so that's part of the game too. And that's one of the reasons they only hire Montanans to be the extras up here in Montana. And so that's a little bit. I mean, if anybody has any other questions, but that's sort of some of the stuff I wanted to share about my experiences. It's just been my experiences are minute compared to the entire show, but I have enjoyed being up there on seasons 1, 2, 4, and 5. 5 being the most that I did, being up there for those different days and different kind of things. My daughter actually went and did a day. If you watch season 5 where Beth got into the fight at the bar, with the other lady and all the cowboys were out there, my daughter was dancing with another background extra in that bar during that. She's sort of short, but we thought, because she had her hair dyed blonde at the time, that, yeah, we'll see Cosette. She'll stand out as one of those dancers. Never get to see her in that episode. Partly she is shorter, and they were showing, you get to see the top of the heads of some people, but not her. So, but she said it was sort of cool. She got to spend a day dancing and being around, all those actors that were there, doing that scene at the bar and she got to see some of the fight that they were filming and such. When they're doing the fights, that's the actors and the stunt people. So she's sort of off to the side and got to see some of it. And she said it was a sort of a cool experience. She didn't watch the show, so she didn't really know everybody. Like my wife and I watched the show, so we know the characters. She really didn't know one character for another. I mean, she texted me and said, "Oh, the one guy talked to me." It's like, which guy? I'm not sure. One of the actors talked to her in the bar, because in the filming of the bar, they're all pretty close. So in their downtime, some of the actors were talking with some of the extras. Wasn't near as big of a crowd as the 200, 300, like some of the scenes I was part of. But she said it was sort of a cool experience. A couple of her friends actually saw one of her friends in one of the episodes, because he did more than just that one with Cosette. He did a few different days. But there was a scene where my wife and I said, oh, there's Cosette's friend, because he was in drama with Cosette, and we had seen him doing plays. He actually was the lead, where Cosette was the female lead and he was the male lead of a play that they did their senior year. And so it was sort of cool. It's like, oh, that's the boy that was the lead with Cosette in that play that she did. So we recognized him. And he really is a outstanding young actor, and I think he wants to pursue acting as a career, where it's more of a hobby for Cosette. But I hope he does get to do a lot, because he was an outstanding young performer, and I'm glad that he got to be in Yellowstone and actually got a little bit of screen time on that one scene. So any other questions, or I'm going to sign off. Went a little bit longer than I normally do today, but that's okay, because we're talking about something fun. I didn't have a safety tip today. Here's a safety tip. When you're out in the hot sun, make sure you stay hydrated. Make sure you have sunscreen. I mean, that was so important on the Yellowstone set when we were out there in that blazing hot sun. And literally, they had people walking around with cases of water, passing out water, saying, drink water. And they made sure water was available to everyone, and were almost forcing people to drink more water. And they had people walking around with cans and bottles of sunscreen, spray on, lotion, whatever, walking around, making sure people had it. So there's your safety tip, because I always like to enjoy life safely. When you're in a hot environment like that, keep yourself hydrated, use sunscreen, because it'll make the day more enjoyable and keep you from becoming a heat injury. Until tomorrow, enjoy life and do it safely.